What if I told you that just 3 ETFs could completely change your financial future and build the kind of wealth most people only dream about? Because in 2026, the smartest investors won't be the ones chasing trends. They'll be the ones using this powerful 3 ETF formula to get rich quietly, consistently, and confidently. A simple, disciplined 3 ETF strategy can create long-term financial freedom without stress or complexity. And to truly understand the power of this idea, you have to look beyond the charts, the numbers, and the technical terms. You need to see what simplicity does to your mindset, your consistency, and your ability to stay invested when the world becomes unpredictable. Most people fail at investing not because they choose the wrong assets, but because they overwhelm themselves with information, chase every trend, panic during downturns, and ultimately lose sight of the bigger picture. But when you commit to a simple 3 ETF portfolio, you remove all of that noise, all of that confusion, and all of that emotional pressure that keeps investors stuck in cycles of fear and indecision. Instead of constantly asking what to buy next or which stock might outperform this year, you gain clarity and structure. Your investing journey shifts from emotional reactions to a calm, strategic process where your money grows steadily over time without requiring constant decisions or risky bets. Imagine finally freeing yourself from the endless scrolling through stock lists, from the exhausting search for the next breakout company, from the pressure of trying to time the market. A 3 ETF portfolio removes that burden by giving you a complete investment foundation in just a few simple positions. With these ETFs, you own thousands of companies across different sectors and regions, allowing your wealth to grow from global innovation, productivity, and economic expansion. You're not trying to beat the market. You're allowing the market to work for you. You're not hoping to get lucky. You're building wealth through a process that has been proven for decades. And the beauty of this simplicity is that it gives you the mental strength to stay consistent because you're no longer reacting to every headline or market rumor. You wake up each day knowing your money is already positioned in the right places, working silently in the background while you focus on your life and goals. The discipline behind a 3 ETF strategy is where the real transformation happens. Anyone can buy investments, but not everyone can stay committed when the market dips or when optimism turns into fear. But when your strategy is simple and when you fully understand why it works, the emotional turbulence of the market becomes easier to handle. You stop seeing downturns as threats and start seeing them as opportunities to buy more at lower prices. You stop checking your portfolio every day because you're no longer chasing instant results. You stop comparing your returns to other people's because you know your foundation is strong, diversified, and built for long-term growth. Discipline becomes easier when your plan is simple, and consistency becomes natural when your investments are clear and repeatable. This is why the 3 ETF strategy is so powerful for building long-term financial freedom. It frees you from decision fatigue. It frees you from emotional mistakes. It frees you from the illusion that you need complicated strategies to win in the market. The truth is that complexity often leads to inconsistency, and inconsistency destroys wealth. But simplicity encourages repetition. Repetition builds habits. Habits create long-term success, and long-term success in investing is what ultimately leads to financial freedom. Think about how peace of mind affects your financial future. When you trust your portfolio, you invest more confidently. When you invest confidently, you contribute more regularly. When you contribute more regularly, your wealth compounds faster. And when your wealth compounds faster, your future becomes brighter than anything you ever imagined. Simplicity has a way of creating clarity, and clarity has a way of creating confidence. That confidence fuels your ability to stay invested through the years, through the ups and downs, through the unexpected events that shake less prepared investors out of the market. Your simple strategy keeps you grounded, focused, and forward-thinking. As time passes, you begin to notice something remarkable. Your 3 ETF portfolio grows not because of luck, not because of timing, but because you allowed the unstoppable force of compounding to work in your favor. Every contribution builds on the previous one. Every market recovery lifts you higher. Every global innovation is reflected in your portfolio. Every new company that enters the market becomes part of your wealth engine. You own the world's progress without having to predict anything. That is the silent power of a simple, disciplined investing approach. You also begin to realize how much time and mental bandwidth you've saved by not chasing trends. While others jump from strategy to strategy, overwhelmed by information, you're moving steadily toward your financial goals. You experience less stress because you don't feel the pressure to constantly monitor the market. You feel more secure because your investments are diversified across thousands of companies rather than concentrated in a handful of risky picks. You feel more in control because your strategy never changes with market mood. It's built to weather storms and thrive over time. This emotional stability gives you a major advantage over the average investor, who often struggles with anxiety, second-guessing, and impulsive decisions. The simplicity of a 3 ETF strategy also teaches you something deeper about wealth, that real financial freedom isn't built by trying to outsmart the system, but by respecting it, by understanding that time in the market matters more than timing the market, by realizing that your role as an investor is not to predict every move, but to build a system that benefits from the long-term growth of the global economy. That's what these 3 ETFs represent, a long-term partnership with the world's progress. As companies grow, your wealth grows. As industries innovate, your portfolio strengthens. As markets expand, your financial foundation becomes more solid. You're no longer dependent on finding winners. You're aligned with the entire market's trajectory. Over the years, this structure becomes more than just an investment strategy. It becomes a mindset. It becomes a calm, steady belief that wealth grows with simplicity, patience, and discipline. You no longer feel pressured to do more, add more, trade more. You understand that each unnecessary move introduces risk, and each moment of hesitation creates lost opportunity. Your simple portfolio gives you a clear path forward. It gives you control over your future. It gives you a sense of PO. Word that comes from knowing your wealth doesn't depend on constant decisions or market predictions, but on your commitment to a strategy that has stood the test of time. With every passing month and every passing year, your confidence grows, your results grow, and your vision for the future grows. You start to see financial freedom not as a distant idea, but as a real, achievable outcome built through a simple plan executed with unwavering discipline. A U.S. large-cap ETF provides powerful long-term growth by owning the strongest companies in the world. And when you begin to understand what that truly means for your financial future, everything about the way you see investing starts to change. Instead of trying to guess which individual stock will explode next year or which sector will outperform, you shift your mindset towards something far more reliable and far more transformative. Owning an entire ecosystem of world-leading businesses that have already proven their strength, their resilience, and their ability to generate wealth for decades. These are the companies that shape the global economy, influence culture, drive technological innovation, and produce the products and services billions of people use every single day. And when you invest in a U.S. large-cap ETF, you don't just invest in one of them, you invest in all of them at once. Automatically, effortlessly, and with the full force of diversification protecting your journey. Imagine the power of having the largest companies in the United States working for you. Companies like these have survived recessions, wars, disruptions, and crises, yet they continue to grow, adapt, and create value. They're the companies that set industry standards, produce groundbreaking technologies, and generate billions in revenue. They hire the best talent in the world, invest heavily in research and development, and constantly compete to be better faster, and more innovative. And every time they grow, expand into a new market, release a new product, or increase their earnings, your ETF captures that growth and turns it into long-term wealth for you. You're not relying on one company's success, you're benefiting from the collective success of an entire market of champions. What makes this ETF even more powerful is that it automatically adjusts to keep you invested in the winners. If a company declines or loses relevance, the index gradually reduces its weighting. If a company becomes more profitable, more dominant, or more valuable, the index increases its weighting. In other words, the ETF evolves naturally without you having to analyze financial statements or predict the future. You stay invested in the strongest performers by design, and that built-in discipline lets you avoid one of the biggest mistakes investors often make: holding on to losing positions out of emotion or overconfidence. With a large cap ETF, the system does the work for you. When you invest in a U.S. large cap ETF, you also gain exposure to every major sector of the economy. You own leading companies in technology, healthcare, finance, energy, retail, consumer goods, communication, and more. If one sector is lagging, another may be thriving. If one industry struggles, another is expanding. This natural diversification reduces your risk while still allowing your portfolio to capture the upside of innovation and economic growth. It's like having a team of the best players in the league. Even if a few have a rough season, the overall team is still strong enough to win championships. And the truth is, the U.S. stock market has a long history of rewarding long-term investors. For decades, it has delivered some of the highest returns in the world. It has led global innovation through companies that created everything from smartphones to electric vehicles to cloud computing. The world relies on American corporations for technology, entertainment, finance, medicine, and consumer products. When you own a large cap ETF, you own a piece of this global influence. You own the companies setting tomorrow's trends. You own the future of artificial intelligence, clean energy, biotech, space exploration, and digital transformation. You are investing in what the world needs today and will demand even more tomorrow. Imagine what this ETF can do over 10, 20, or 30 years. Imagine the compounding effect of owning companies that consistently grow earnings, pay dividends, repurchase shares, and expand worldwide. Imagine the power of reinvesting those returns year after year. What starts as a small investment today becomes a snowball that grows larger with every passing year. This is the kind of long-term growth that turns ordinary people into millionaires, not through speculation, but through patience and smart strategy. What makes this even more inspiring is that you don't need to be rich to start. You don't need advanced financial knowledge. You don't need to take on high risk. A U.S. large cap ETF is accessible, affordable, and designed for everyday investors who want to build wealth without stress. It allows you to own a slice of the most competitive companies on the planet without needing to pick individual winners. The ETF gives you automatic diversification, instant exposure to top-performing businesses, and a long-term growth engine that has historically outperformed countless complex strategies. Think about the emotional freedom that comes with this approach. Instead of constantly checking stock prices and worrying about market noise, you can sit back with confidence. You know that you're invested in companies with strong balance sheets, world-class management, global influence, and competitive advantages that smaller companies simply cannot replicate. When the market dips, you don't panic, you see opportunity. When stocks rise, you benefit automatically. When technology evolves, your ETF evolves with it. You're no longer reacting to the market, you're participating in its long-term growth the same way successful investors have for decades. Over time, this creates a mindset shift. You stop seeing investing as gambling and start seeing it as ownership. You own a piece of the company shaping the future. You own innovation, you own progress, you own the growth of the world's strongest economy, And with every contribution you make, your ownership increases. With every year that passes, your wealth compounds. With every breakthrough companies achieve, your future becomes brighter. This is why a U.S. large cap ETF is one of the most powerful tools for long-term wealth creation. It aligns you with success. It positions you for growth. It builds financial independence without requiring stress, complexity, or constant monitoring. And most importantly, it allows you to benefit from the strength of companies that have already proven they can survive, adapt, and lead in any environment. You are not betting on the unknown. You are partnering with the giants that move the market forward. This one ETF can change your financial trajectory. It can give you confidence. It can give you stability. It can give you the kind of long-term growth that transforms your life. And when combined with discipline, consistency, and patience, it becomes one of the most reliable paths toward building real, lasting wealth that follows you into 2026 and far beyond. An international ETF expands your wealth globally, capturing opportunities across multiple markets and economies. And when you begin to understand the power behind that, your entire perspective on investing transforms. You realize that the world is far bigger than any single country, any single market, or any single economic cycle. You understand that innovation, growth, and opportunity are happening everywhere, not just in one corner of the world. Wealth is being created in Asia. Breakthroughs are emerging in Europe. Industries are expanding in Latin America. And transformative companies are rising in nations many investors have never even thought about. By choosing an international ETF, you open the door to all of this potential, allowing your portfolio to benefit from global progress, not just domestic growth. Imagine the impact of owning thousands of companies from dozens of countries, each contributing their share of growth, productivity, and innovation to your financial future. When one region slows down, another picks up. When one country faces a recession, another enters a boom. When one industry matures in one part of the world, it explodes in another. This natural balance creates a powerful foundation for long-term investing because your wealth is no longer tied to the fortunes of a single nation. It is tied to the growth of the world itself. And no matter what happens in one economy, the global economy continues to move forward as billions of people work, innovate, produce, and consume every day. That unstoppable momentum becomes a part of your wealth journey when you invest internationally. An international ETF gives you exposure to companies that most investors overlook. Think about the technological advancements coming out of Asia. Companies leading in robotics, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and electric vehicles. Think about Europe, where leaders in pharmaceuticals, luxury goods, renewable energy, and engineering dominate industries. Think about emerging markets, where younger populations, rapid urbanization, and expanding middle classes create massive long-term demand for products and services. You're gaining access to companies that thrive under different economic conditions, different population trends, and different growth cycles. Some of these markets grow faster than the U.S. during certain years, providing your portfolio with performance boosts you would miss if you stayed limited to one region. And it's not just about diversification of geography, it's diversification of innovation. Different regions lead in different industries. Europe leads in industrial, manufacturing, and luxury. Japan dominates in advanced hardware and robotics. South Korea is a powerhouse in technology and consumer electronics. Emerging markets excel in raw materials, fintech adoption, infrastructure expansion, and consumer growth. By owning an international ETF, you don't need to guess which country will outperform or which industry will boom. You capture it all. You own the global race for progress, and you allow your wealth to grow from every direction at once. There's also a profound psychological benefit that comes with global investing. When you expand beyond your home market, you remove emotional biases like home country loyalty and limited perspective. You begin to see your portfolio as a global ecosystem rather than a small cluster of familiar companies. This broader mindset helps you stay calmer during market downturns because you understand that no single market tells the full story of global growth. A decline in one region becomes less frightening when you know another region is experiencing momentum. This emotional balance makes you a stronger, more consistent investor because your portfolio is built on worldwide diversification rather than concentrated risk. Another powerful aspect of international ETFs is their ability to reduce the impact of political uncertainty. Every country experiences political changes, economic challenges, and regulatory shifts. If your entire portfolio relies on one government's policies or one country's stability, your financial future becomes vulnerable to events beyond your control. But when your investments are spread across dozens of countries, no single political decision can derail your long-term success. Your wealth becomes more resilient, more balanced, and more insulated from local disruptions. You're not depending on one nation's success. You're aligning yourself with humanity's progress as a whole. Over time, global diversification also smooths your returns. While U.S. markets may dominate in certain years, international markets often outperform in others. Historically, leadership rotates. There are years when Europe surges, years when Japan leads, years when emerging markets experience explosive growth. If you only invest in one country, you miss these cycles. But with an international ETF, you capture those cycles automatically. You're always positioned to benefit from whichever region is experiencing growth without needing to predict which one it will be. This builds a portfolio that grows steadily, not unevenly, and that compounds smoothly rather than sharply rising and falling. Let's imagine the long-term impact. You start investing in an international ETF today, and over the next 10, 20, or 30 years, the world evolves. New industries rise in countries that were once overlooked. Populations shift. Policies change. Technologies emerge from unexpected places. Markets that were once considered developing become global leaders. And because you invested globally, you were part of that growth from the very beginning. Your portfolio expands not because of luck, but because you intentionally opened yourself to opportunities far beyond your local market. Your wealth grows with the world's progress. Your financial future becomes tied to the collective success of billions of people working every day to build better lives for themselves and their families. This creates a powerful sense of confidence. You're no longer worried about whether your home market will outperform this year or next year because your portfolio isn't limited by borders. You've moved beyond the idea of relying on one economy, one set of companies, or one set of conditions. You've embraced a strategy that reflects the reality of our interconnected global economy. And when you invest this way consistently, your portfolio becomes a powerful engine of long-term wealth that grows with every year, every innovation, and every shift in global leadership. An international ETF doesn't just diversify your investments, it expands your vision. It teaches you that opportunity is everywhere. It shows you that growth is not limited to one place, one industry, or one moment in time. It connects your financial future to the world's evolution. And it gives you the extraordinary advantage of participating in the rise of global markets without needing to predict anything or take unnecessary risks. It becomes one of the strongest pillars of your long-term strategy, helping you build wealth with stability, balance, and unstoppable global momentum. A bond or treasury ETF protects your portfolio, stabilizes returns, and strengthens your ability to stay invested during downturns. And to truly appreciate why this matters, you have to understand the emotional and financial side of investing. The market is not a straight line. It rises, it falls, it surprises, and it tests you. Anyone can feel confident during good times, but real wealth is built by those who stay calm and disciplined when volatility strikes. A bond or treasury ETF becomes your anchor, your steady force, your financial seatbelt that keeps you grounded while the rest of the market experiences turbulence. It allows you to continue your journey without fear, without panic, and without feeling like you need to abandon your long-term plan when the world becomes uncertain. Imagine a moment when stocks are falling, headlines are filled with panic, and everyone around you is stressed, unsure, and making emotional decisions. People sell at the worst possible times, not because their strategy is wrong, but because their emotions overpower their logic. This is where a bond ETF steps in as one of the most underrated yet powerful tools in long-term investing. Bonds traditionally move differently from stocks. When stocks drop, bonds often stay steady or even rise. When the economy slows, bonds can provide income. When fear spreads, bonds offer safety. This difference in behavior between stocks and bonds is what creates stability in your portfolio. Instead of everything falling at once, your bond ETF cushions the impact. It acts as a shock absorber that reduces the overall volatility of your investments, allowing you to stay invested instead of making decisions out of fear. This stability is more valuable than most people realize. Without it, many investors exit the market during downturns, locking in losses and ruining their chance to benefit from future recoveries. With a bond ETF, you're more likely to stay the course because your portfolio doesn't feel like it's collapsing. You see balance, you feel security, and that security keeps you consistent, which is the most powerful behavior in long-term wealth building. Wealth grows not from avoiding downturns, but from surviving them, and a bond ETF is the tool that helps you survive emotionally and mathematically. Bonds also bring something unique to your portfolio: predictable income. Even when markets are unstable, bond ETFs generate interest from the underlying government or corporate bonds they hold. This steady stream of income adds another year of stability, helping your portfolio grow, even in years when stocks may struggle. It's like having a reliable paycheck that arrives regardless of what the stock market is doing. That consistency builds confidence and prevents you from feeling overwhelmed by short-term market noise. Bonds may not grow as quickly as stocks, but their purpose is not explosive growth. It is protection, balance, and endurance. Think about the future. There will be years of strong stock market returns, but there will also be years when growth is slow or negative. A portfolio made only of stocks can feel like a roller coaster, thrilling but unpredictable. A portfolio with a bond ETF feels more like a steady journey, where the highs are smoother and the lows are much easier to handle. This smoothness is what keeps investors on track for decades. Over time, the difference between someone who stayed invested and someone who panicked and sold out can be enormous. Often, the gap between success and failure is not skill, knowledge, or access. It's stability. Stability comes from balance, and balance comes from including bonds. A bond or treasury ETF becomes even more important when you think about the compounding effect over long periods. When markets decline and your bond ETF stays stable, you have two major advantages. First, your overall portfolio value holds up better. Second, you can rebalance, selling a bit of bonds to buy stocks at lower prices. This means your bond ETF doesn't just protect you, it gives you the opportunity to buy growth at a discount, accelerating your compounding when the market recovers. Without bonds, many investors simply watch their portfolios fall and do nothing. With bonds, you have a predictable strategy to take advantage of downturns. It transforms fear into opportunity and uncertainty into long-term growth. Treasury ETFs, which focus on government bonds, ADD, an even deeper level of security. Governments are far more stable than corporations, and U.S. treasuries especially are considered one of the safest assets in the world. In moments of global fear, investors rush into treasuries because they trust them. When you own a Treasury ETF, you benefit from that demand. This creates a natural counterbalance to stock volatility. When panic rises, Treasury prices often increase. And because your Treasury ETF holds them, your portfolio benefits from that rise. This is why Treasuries are often called a safe haven. They don't just protect your money, they give you emotional peace during times of uncertainty. Over time, you begin to appreciate something deeper. The role of bonds is not to make you rich quickly, but to ensure you stay invested long enough to become rich slowly. They protect your emotional discipline, and that discipline is everything. Anyone can invest for 1 year. Anyone can invest when the market is rising, but very few can invest through recessions, bear markets, global tensions, and economic downturns. Those who do are the ones who build real wealth. And having a bond or Treasury ETF makes that emotional journey possible. It gives your portfolio a foundation that doesn't crack under pressure. It reduces fear, encourages consistency, and supports long-term vision, even when the short term feels uncertain. You also begin to understand that different stages of life require different levels of protection. Younger investors may want more stocks, but as time passes, stability becomes essential. A bond ETF grows with you. It adjusts to your needs. It becomes not just a part of your portfolio, but a part of your financial peace. Even if you're young today, the presence of bonds teaches you discipline. It teaches you patience. It teaches you what balanced wealth building feels like. It shows you that smart investing is not just about chasing returns, but about protecting them. And perhaps the most inspiring part of all is that a simple bond ETF gives you the confidence to take long-term risks where they matter in stocks and global markets, because you know you have a safety layer supporting you. Risk feels smarter, not scarier. Growth feels achievable, not overwhelming. The journey feels stable, not chaotic. With this protection, you stay in the game longer, invest more consistently, and compound more powerfully. A bond or Treasury ETF becomes your shield in the world of investing. And that shield is what allows you to keep moving forward, no matter what the market brings. The power of consistency is the quiet force behind every life-changing financial transformation. And the truth is that most people underestimate how incredibly valuable it can be when applied to investing. They look for shortcuts. They chase sudden spikes. They search for the next big thing that will make them rich overnight, but in doing so, they overlook the simple, reliable, unstoppable formula that has built more wealth for ordinary people than any secret strategy ever could. Consistency is not about perfection. It's about rhythm, about showing up, about sticking to the plan. Even on the days when the market feels uncertain, your emotions feel loud, and the world feels unpredictable. And in 2026, with volatility, innovation, and global shifts creating both opportunities and doubts, the investors who learn to master consistency will be the ones who rise above the noise and build real, lasting wealth that compounds far beyond their expectations. There is a confidence that grows inside you when you commit to something long enough to see it work. At first, consistency feels slow, almost invisible, like nothing meaningful is happening. You invest your monthly amount, whether it's large or small, and you don't see immediate transformation. Your account balance moves, but not dramatically. Your contributions feel like droplets in a vast ocean, and you wonder if this is really the path to becoming wealthy. But then something magical happens. The tipping point arrives. The curve starts to bend. Compounding takes your consistency and turns it into acceleration, growth, and momentum. Suddenly you realize that every one of those small, seemingly insignificant steps mattered. Every contribution, every disciplined decision, every time you chose long-term thinking over short-term excitement was a brick in the foundation of your financial future. The person who stays consistent becomes unstoppable, not because they are the smartest or luckiest, but because they are committed to the process that guarantees results. When you build a 3 ETF portfolio designed to make you rich in 2026 and beyond, consistency becomes the silent partner that multiplies its power. Whether your portfolio includes broad market ETFs that grow with global innovation, dividend ETFs that pay you while you sleep, or sector funds that ride the biggest technological revolutions of our time, none of them can work if you don't stay consistent. Markets will rise, markets will fall, and sometimes they will do both in the same week. But consistency is what keeps your strategy alive when your emotions tell you to react. It is what keeps your focus sharp when distractions try to pull you away. It is what keeps your wealth compounding when doubt tries to convince you to stop. In a world full of noise, consistency is clarity. In a world full of chaos, consistency is peace. In a world full of quick wins and sudden losses, consistency is the only real superpower that investors can rely on. Imagine yourself 10 years from now looking back at the decisions you made in 2026. Will you be grateful that you were patient, disciplined, and calm, even when it felt slow, or will you regret that you kept waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect dip, the perfect level of confidence that never arrived? The truth is that the perfect moment does not exist. Markets don't send invitations. Wealth-building opportunities don't wait for you to feel ready. The people who become rich aren't the ones who had perfect timing, but the ones who built perfect habits. They made investing a routine, not a reaction. They automated their contributions, not their worries. They invested through the highs and lows, knowing that consistency removes emotion from the equation and replaces it with progress. Consistency is also what separates dreamers from achievers. Many people dream of financial freedom, early retirement, and a future where money works for them instead of the other way around. But very few are willing to stay consistent long enough to achieve it. They start strong but stop early. They invest when the market is calm but panic when it becomes turbulent. They get excited at the beginning but lose focus before compounding can work its magic. If you want to build wealth that lasts, you have to embrace consistency as a lifestyle, not a moment. You have to believe in the long-term power of your portfolio, even when short-term fluctuations test your patience. You have to understand that every small action compounds into a massive result if you give it enough time. When you adopt consistency in your 3 ETF portfolio, something else begins to shift inside you. You transform from a reactive person into a strategic thinker. You stop worrying about daily market noise and start focusing on long-term value. You lose the fear of volatility because you know your consistent contributions use downturns to your advantage by lowering your average cost. You gain confidence because your plan is simple, scalable, and built for long-term success. You become empowered because your wealth is no longer tied to unpredictable moments, but to predictable actions. And slowly, without realizing it, you become the kind of investor who builds real wealth. Quietly, steadily, confidently. Consistency also builds emotional resilience. When market corrections happen, most people panic because they don't have a system they trust. But when you stay consistent, corrections become opportunities. Lower prices become discounts. Volatility becomes fuel for compounding. Fear becomes clarity. Instead of asking whether you should stop investing, you ask how much more you can add. This shift is one of the greatest gifts that consistency gives you, the ability to see what others miss. While everyone else worries about the short-term noise, you focus on long-term abundance. While they chase trends, you build wealth. While they hope for luck, you rely on discipline. And because of that, you end up wealthier, stronger, and far more financially secure than those who relied on excitement instead of consistency. The reality is that wealth doesn't come from big moves. It comes from small moves repeated over time. It comes from investing a piece of every paycheck. It comes from trusting your 3 ETF portfolio even when the world feels unpredictable. It comes from building habits that align with your future goals. When you stay consistent, you stop being a spectator in the market, become a creator of your financial destiny. You develop a pace that matches your dreams and a patience that protects your progress. You begin to understand that every month you invest, you're not just buying shares, You're buying freedom, buying time, buying opportunity, buying a future where your money grows even when you sleep. Consistency doesn't just build wealth, it builds character, it builds strength, it builds confidence, it builds a future you can be proud of. And in 2026, when the world is changing faster than ever, the greatest decision you can make is to choose consistency over chaos, discipline over distractions, and long-term wealth over short-term excitement. Because once you commit to consistent investing, nothing can stop you from becoming the person you want to be and achieving the wealth you know you're capable of creating.